good news is justification. The good news is justification. And such a justification that has absolutely nothing to do with what we would assume the general or the traditional connotation to justification is. Looking through the narrative of the scriptures, looking through how the Bible depicts its own character. And again, when I say Bible, Genesis to Malachi. We're seeing that in those first 3 chapters of the book of Genesis, specifically in the garden scene, the character, the intended character that the mind within the scriptures would have the devotional conversation adopt is found therein. The tidings of the Bible, again, Genesis to Malachi. The original tidings, I should say, of the scriptures. The original tidings are found in the first 3 chapters of the book of Genesis, and especially within that garden scene. And what we actually find is the new covenant promise. It's a new covenant promise for us because it is a new concept. A new concept of the devotional conversation relying on nothing else but its own journey, cemented by words from within the scriptures. This is a new concept to us because the religious world and its blueprint, the blueprint of the religious world, which is acknowledgement by righteous, quote-unquote, righteous religious law, that's the theme. That's the only way to do it. But unfortunately, we can dip into the scriptures, and fortunately, we can see that that is not what the author writing this believes. The author writing the book of Genesis, the first 3 chapters specifically, and especially the garden scene, does not believe the conversation to be held down, bogged down by religious law. The illustration that they're giving is enough proof. And we've seen enough proof from this author for us to understand that their intention, their mindset, is to awaken the devotional conversations, thoughts, feelings, actions, and behaviors to a more positive outcome for it. A more positive outcome for it, which is an outcome occurring from or through that forbidden tree. And I say that forbidden tree, not in reference to the tree of that good and evil. The now forbidden tree is the tree of life, which is guided and protected by imaginary images joined to a Baal. We have to get through that to get to that understanding. And when we do, when we put all of those illustrations together from Genesis 1, 2, and 3, we will see, and we do see, and we are seeing the new covenant promise brought to life, which is Ezekiel 36, 26, and 27. Ezekiel 36, 26, and 27. A new heart also will I give you, and a new spirit will I put within you. I will take away the stony heart out of your flesh, and will give you an heart of flesh. And I will put my spirit within you and cause you to walk in my statutes, and you shall keep my judgments and do them. So this has nothing to do with the hand of Moses. And when I say Moses, this isn't the Moses from in the scripture. This is any individual scripting a religious routine for other consciences to follow. The hand of Moses operates in this fashion. This practice that we are seeing in the book of Ezekiel, or I should say the promised practice, is not from a hand of a Moses. This is something that is given actually without hands. The devotional conversation taking its journey upon itself, and from that moving absolutely forward. Justification, as we are seeing through the garden scene and from the first 3 chapters of the book of Genesis, the justification intended is the cleansing, the clearing, the refreshing, the regenerating, the resurrecting of the devotional conversations, thoughts, feelings, actions, and behaviors from denominations. The devotional conversations, regeneration and resurrection is what is on the mind of the scriptures. Why? So that a new mind, or as it says, new spirit, and a lively heart can get placed right into the core of our devotional conversation. The Bible's mind is geared, one-track mind in the Bible, one-track mind. The Bible's one-track mind is for the devotional conversation's well-being. Justification is the well-being, or the new well-being, or the re-established well-being of the devotional conversation. And it has to be new or re-established or regenerated because our conversation is created from a dead zone. Our conversations equally are created from a dead zone. The dead zone is the religious world. The concepts, the precepts, the ideas, the theories, all of it therein shapes the conversation that we have. Justification is a process of rebirth. How can a man be born when he is old already? How can a man be born when he is old already? That was the question. The answer wasn't literal, the answer was mental. The oldness isn't literal oldness, the oldness is oldness in manners, in thought, in feeling, in action, in belief, devotionally, philosophically, theologically. The author of the book of Genesis understands this, and so they gave us an example of what not to do. They gave us a negative example so that we may understand what's positive, which is absolutely brilliant. To decode that negative example, to decode what's positive, leads the observant reader to understand that their goal and their intention, the goal and the intention of the writer of that illustration of the garden, especially the first 3 chapters of the book of Genesis, they want their reader to wake up. They want their reader to see the good news. They want their reader to understand the good tidings that they themselves are publishing through the illustration, which is the gift of consciousness given to the devotional mind. The gift of consciousness given to the devotional mind. How? Ezekiel tells us, by way of a certain spirit filling up that mind. How and by what means? Looking in the book of Proverbs. Proverbs 1, and a verse we've gone over plenty of times, but this is just fitting. Proverbs 1, verse 23, turn you at my reproof. Behold, I will pour out my spirit unto you. I will make known my words unto you. Now, usually I just focus on that portion of how, quote unquote, spirit is defined and how its, quote unquote, outpouring is defined. When receiving spirit, one is receiving words. But how does that verse begin? Turn you at my reproof. Turn you at my reproof. Turn you at my reproof. In order to receive a proper outpouring of spirit, which is a proper outpouring of words, reproof, which is another word for instruction, which is another word for counsel, has to be taken into consideration. Words, what the author of the Proverbs is getting at. Words, and giving fair attention to them, mentally and physically. Words from within the scriptures, giving fair attention to them. This is what allows the individual conversation and the individual being of the human to receive an outpouring of words to increase and to advance their understanding for their devotional or philosophical journey with the things within the Bible.
A Fallen Record, The Christian Transgression, is a book bringing history and the Bible together. We all want to know how the Christian religion began. But does the Bible show error occurring in the early church? This book looks at the origin of the Christian movement, and in a way where philosophical context is shown from the Bible. Learn Christian history from the narrative given by the Bible, and learn how the Bible shows the Christian religion taking another path. In A Fallen Record, The Christian Transgression.
What are the words that are to fill up what is within the devotional conversation? What is that spirit that is to enter into the devotional conversation to refresh the spirit, the mind that is already within the devotional conversation? The next chapter in the book of Proverbs, Proverbs chapter 2. Proverbs chapter 2, verse 6. For the Lord giveth wisdom. Out of his mouth cometh knowledge and understanding. So chapter 1 told us that, turn you at my reproof, I will pour out my spirit unto you, I will make known my words unto you. What are these words? Proverbs chapter 2 tells us. These are words of knowledge, these are words of understanding. These are words of a philosophy, these are words of a science. These words of a philosophy, these words of an understanding, these words of a science, this is the reproof, this is the instruction, this is the counsel of the living God, or of the mind at the core of the scriptures. This reproof, this counsel, this philosophy, this doctrine, this science, this understanding, the first 3 chapters of the book of Genesis seal up, especially the garden scene. To pay attention to these things, this is what allows justification to take place. Justification being the cleansing and the separating of the devotional conversation from an unjust experience. What is an unjust experience? The unjust experience is what the author of the book of Genesis highlights through their narrative. The devotional conversation choosing the concept of good and evil to be or to fulfill the concept of gods. This is all illustration and language that we've broken down. Gods, not literal gods. Gods don't exist to the Bible. Good and evil, not literal morality. That's not the context. Those individuals, that assembly, that host, they chose the lifestyle that they came out of, which was a lifestyle of priesthood. They chose priesthood. Choosing priesthood, they chose ordination and order by religious law. That's that tree. They forsook the other tree, which was an experience by, out of his mouth cometh wisdom, knowledge, and understanding. They refused reproof. And because of that, the consequence was a block on science, understanding, and knowledge from the core of the scriptures by imaginary images joined to a Baal. So now the underlying theme of the religious world is the blueprint of good and evil for the purpose of becoming gods, or the blueprint of priesthood to rule by religious law. And if we want to get past that and to sink our teeth into the science at the core of the scriptures, we have to get past imaginary images joined to a Baal, or spokes idols for a Jesus. In every single generation, this is repeating. Author of the book of Genesis isn't giving us a single solitary situation. This is repeating. Every generation will have its Jesus with spokesmen around that figure every generation. This is just so happening to be the one that we are in. And the cycle continues. This isn't anything that should be surprising. This is how things work. And the author of the book of Genesis is letting us know how things work. Letting us know how things work. They're giving us the outcome that we may not be able to see, and we won't, so that we can understand how to carry our devotional conversation and the means by which it should be carried, which means are a means by or through reproof, for the purpose of having words poured out to our conversation's intelligence, so that it may receive a new heart and a new mind. The author of the book of Genesis, through their narrative, and the narrative of the first 3 chapters of the book of Genesis, garden scene included, they are letting us know the process of justification. The process of justification, which process the pair in Genesis chapter 3 could not maintain. The process being found in Ezekiel 20. Ezekiel 29 and 10. Ezekiel 29 and 10. But I wrought for my name's sake that it should not be polluted before the heathen among whom they were, in whose sight I made myself known unto them in bringing them forth out of the land of Egypt. Wherefore I caused them to go forth out of the land of Egypt and brought them into the wilderness. This scene here is the same scene from Genesis 1 to Genesis 2. Genesis 1 to Genesis 2, same scene as this. Creation in 1, Genesis 1, creation in 2. Creation in Genesis chapter 2. 2 creations. These are not 2 separate narratives. These are not 2 separate narratives. The author didn't somehow forget where they were in their script and had to invent something. These are consistent narratives. We're seeing an Exodus. The gap between Genesis 1 and Genesis 2 is an Exodus, which Exodus is cemented by the illustration of that one created from out of the dust. This is an illustration and an example, figuratively, of how the individual is supposed to carry their devotional conversation. That Exodus leads into a new territory. What was once created from the dust and dwelt in a wilderness found itself situated, found itself placed in a new territory, a territory of its own to cultivate. This is the example of justification that we are supposed to figuratively mirror. Our devotional conversation, as the illustration and the tidings found within the garden prove, is to find itself resurrected from the blueprint of the religious world, existing in a solitary wilderness by itself for the purpose of it arriving and being placed within a territory of its own experience, for it to then address and handle the contents therein. This is justification. And in the midst of that justification, there will be an examination. Will we go back to where we came out of? Or will we move forward by words of understanding? Will we go back to where we came from, or will we move forward by words of understanding? Will we go back, or will we move forward? That's the entire thing that the author of the book of Genesis, and especially that illustration of the garden scene, they want us to sort of acknowledge. There is a process of pruning and purging the devotional conversation. Once it reaches a certain height, once it reaches a certain level of consciousness, there will come a point in time in each and every single one of our conversations where our conversation's conscience is going to start knocking on the door of our heart. This knock on the door of our heart is our conversation letting us know that it needs an experience that our heart, in and of itself, cannot give to it. So we have to be able to let go of our conversation so that it can, in and of itself, understand its own character, and from that understanding, grow into its own state of mind, so that the state of mind that it is growing in and has grown in to become can then bless the heart from which it was knocking on. That marriage between the contents of our conversation and the state of our heart, the conscience of our heart, that marriage is the result of justification. But that can't happen. That can't happen if our conversation is yet abiding by the deception that the religious world is. The blueprint of the religious world is given to us as a given deception. That's the given deception. When we're able to wake up from the given deception, which is righteousness by religious law, favor, pardon, and piety to whatever divine I we imagine through religious law, given by religious law, and the routine and theory therein, when we can wake up to that, quit that, understand the error that the author of the book of Genesis is giving us in the garden scene, well, then we will be able to take our conversation in hand for the purpose of understanding sound wisdom and understanding, to then go to the tree that has been cut off from us due to imaginary images and the veil guarding it, protecting it. We can cut them in half. We can slaughter them, those images in that veil. We can slaughter it, getting to that tree of understanding to eat from it for the purpose of well-being to our core heart. Hair care enthusiasts, are you ready to elevate your hair game without breaking the bank? If you are, this will be very interesting to you. Divi will give you an exclusive $10 off discount on all premium hair care products. But to claim this fantastic offer, all you have to do is visit their website at diviofficial.com/Linwood61174. Whether you're looking to nourish your locks, revitalize your scalp, or want a serum for hair growth that actually works, Divi has you covered. Visit diviofficial.com/Linwood61174 and unlock your $10 off discount now. So now when you look at the book of Isaiah 42, 16 and 17, it looks a little bit different. Isaiah 42, 16 and 17, things begin to take on a little bit of a shift. Now, I will bring the blind by a way that they knew not. I will lead them in paths that they have not known. I will make darkness light before them, crooked things straight. These things will I do unto them, and not forsake them. They shall be turned back. They shall be greatly ashamed that trust in graven images, that say to the molten images, you are our gods. Now, this is a lot of faith on the part of the writer here, because when we look around today, whether it's today, drop us in any age, this verse can be there in our day today or in any age, and we will not see it fulfilled. We won't see it fulfilled. No matter where we're looking now, we will always see images being adored. Whether the images are physical, whether the images are mental, whether the images are opinionated, they will be adored. The experience that the author here is talking about is the experience that the pair in the garden, that the host of the garden should have done, should have experienced, but they didn't. They chose the traditional route. The traditional route was to maintain self by religious law and to maintain other consciences in the same fashion. That's the traditional manner. But the author of the book of Genesis is writing that to let us know that that's actually not the traditional manner. Isaiah 42 lets us know what the traditional manner is. The traditional manner is a resurrection from that, to the point where the individual conversation now hates what they have been resurrected from out of. That's the traditional experience. That's the traditional experience. But for some reason, no matter what generation we are in, the non-traditional experience will be chosen, and it will become the traditional experience. Meanwhile, the actual traditional experience, which is an experience of mind resurrecting from out of, everything that is there to be taken as traditional will be forgotten, lost, and neglected. Author of the book of Genesis is giving us the illustration that they are because they want their reader to understand the traditional experience. The traditional experience is not the experience of that knowledge of good and evil, of that concept of priesthood. The traditional experience is an experience of the concept of consciousness added to the individual devotional conversation. So the author of the book of Genesis is letting their reader know, no matter what generation, no matter what period of time, the kind of man that will exist, which is priest kind, they will consume knowledge of the concept of good and evil. That's a given. That won't change. Good news is that that's not you. That does not have to be you, nor was it intended. You are not that class. You are of the class of that tree of foundational life. You are of the class of that mind, of the class of that mind of science, which science arrives inwardly. Not by the out of what the priest kind is used to, but by the in from which they will never know or grow accustomed to. The good news is the devotional conversation's resurrection from that belief. The good news is the devotional conversation being able to digest for itself, to have an experience to maintain for itself, that by that experience, it may water what is around it, whether it be the mind of an environment, whether it be the mind of the people around it. The Bible's core focus is the devotional conversation's conscience, and the lesson therein that the tidings that the author of the book of Genesis within that garden scene, and especially chapters 1 and 2, also letting their careful observer, their mindful reader know that justification is for the devotional conversation's thoughts, feelings, actions, and behaviors, so that within it, it can know the science at the mind of the core of the scriptures for the purpose of operating by it alone, by what it accrues through experience, for the purpose of edifying the heart of the being of the human.